The top for this project is going to be made out of pine. I went and purchased two 2x10 pieces of just regular grade construction pine. And I got the 10 footers because since it's going to be an 8-foot table, if you got 8 footers, you'd have to be super careful. It would be almost impossible to get that edge lined up on both sides during glue up. It's just easier to get the 10 footers and then trim a little off of each end. So what I'm going to do is I have this set up and I'm going to rip off the edge of one side of both the pieces and then send it through, and I'm going to be cutting this into strips. So since this is 1.5 inches thick, I'm probably going to make either 2-inch or 1.5 inch squares out of these so that it's going to have more of a look of an edge grain butcher block cutting board. And that will just make it stronger. You won't have to worry about cupping or twisting over time when you do something like that. And it will just look a little fancier than just construction grade pine. I took my tabletop out of those clamps this morning, and this is fairly flat for the way I decided to glue this up. I didn't joint or plane any of these boards before I put them together. They're construction grade lumber, and I didn't use biscuits or splines to help align the boards during glue up. I just kind of glue them together like you would a cutting board, and there's only a couple little high spots. So I'm going to go through with my hand plane and just plane down the high spots. So I already cleaned up the bottom a little bit. That's ready for sanding. So I'm just going to go through the top and clean up. Mostly, get some of this glue off and take down those high spots. After I sanded that top, I started applying polyurethane on it and then started working on these two cubbies that are going to go mount directly underneath the desk. So I had some 3/4 inch birch veneer pine, and I just kind of cut that down to a rough size and then ripped some 3-inch strips and just butt jointed them together. I believe these cubbies are just holding paper, so they're not going to be holding a lot of weight, so it wasn't worth doing any sort of fancy joints on them. Then I just ripped down a couple thin pieces of 1/4 inch plywood and attached that to the back with some brads. And I had some thin pine laying around, and I just ripped those down into thin sheets, and I was going to use that to cover the plies of the plywood, and it would match the top since the top is also made out of pine. So then I just ripped those down to size and attached those with brads as well. To mount these on the underside, I just lined them up with where the cabinets would be going and sunk some really long 4-inch screws through all of them and then into the tabletop. Then that tabletop could be flipped, and these cabinets aren't on level ground, so that's why the top doesn't look level on top of the cabinets. Then the customer also wanted a place to hold cans full with pencils, so I took some scrap 4x6 and drilled some 3-inch holes into it and then removed the scrap with a chisel.
and that could be moved all across the tabletop wherever you wanted to put it, but hold cans to hold pencils.
Last night I put the first coat of poly on this tabletop, and this morning I lightly sanded it and then removed all the dust with a wet rag, and now I'm going to put the second coat on. And this will probably take 3 coats using the same process.